It is Maddie here today, and finally we're sitting down to dive into a topic that's been highly requested on the channel since I dropped my review for Starfield Shattered Space. And the question you may have following that up is, well, why'd you wait so long if this was such a requested topic? I'm a big believer in taking the time you need to have the tough conversations, and I also wanted to get away from the emotionality of the release window that is Starfield Shattered Space.
I feel that it's good to distance oneself from the positive or negativeness of it.
Immense disappointment with that. I've gone into that a couple of videos now, and I also wanted to spread it out. I don't want to just have it rain negative aura all over my channel. If I can control some of that, I like to space out my critical pieces and try to handle it with a level of grace so I'm not just constantly pounding the same points home 4 days in a row. I feel like they lose.
I think it's absurd to think that Bethesda has fallen. There are literally leaks of people gameplay testing Elder Scrolls 6 and Fallout 3 Remake. They like demo levels or whatever you call it. And so, like, if you look at Starfield, it makes sense. If they rush development, Bethesda isn't Bethesda anymore. Bethesda is Microsoft. Microsoft needs money. They've taken a lot of hits this year. Microsoft has closed down a lot of studios and fired a lot of game developers, including developers in the playtesting area, ironically, of Bethesda Studio.
Some of their meaning, so I try to handle it with some level of responsibility. But this one in particular, I really wanted to take some time to mull on the subject matter, to think, am I concerned about Elder Scrolls 6? Is it just a little blip on the radar here with Shattered Space? Is it a sign of bigger things to come? I have lots of
Elder Scrolls 6, all of the developers that were working on Starfield, half of them were transferred over to the development of Elder Scrolls 6 post-launch. That was someone said that in a comment. I didn't go validate that. It doesn't matter. But suffice it to say, people that were working on Starfield as soon as it was released were told to go work on Elder Scrolls 6. It's been in development for years and has hundreds of developers on it. And unlike not knowing what to do with Starfield, like I said, Starfield looks rushed. They took the currency from the base game and put it in a faction that is isolationist. The House of Faerûn was totally by itself. They had their own technology, their own weapons, their own armor, this whole lore thing. And when they released the expansion, they used the same intergalactic currency. They have the same ship parts, apparently, because there was no new ship parts in the expansion.
thoughts. Certainly, I've had a lot of time to develop them, and I encourage you, as always, to share yours down below. Are you excited for Elder Scrolls 6 after everything that's happened with Starfield and Bethesda as of late? Or are you feeling a little bit unfazed in that this is just a bump in the road otherwise to the journey to Elder Scrolls 6?
I feel that this was just a small bump in the road to Elder Scrolls 6 and the Fallout 3 remake because it had to be released in order to get the game out so that way they can say it's done and they can let people just go on their little space adventure. I imagine that they're going to be releasing Starfield 2 in a very, very long time from now with updates and stuff based on what the modders do with the game. So, because people will be making mods on what they want to see in Starfield, and, you know, Bethesda has a habit of, look, they've taken stuff that modders have made and then added it to the future games in future installments.
I'm curious to see where your thoughts lie. For me personally, I'm going to categorize this conversation in two areas. One is personally speaking, as in just me and my thoughts. I'm going to go first with that. The next is broadly speaking, like just speaking on a broader sense of the things I read online, the general scuttlebutt around Bethesda, the vibes, if you will. We're vibe checking from there on, and just laying out a couple of facts and potential situations that surround Elder Scrolls 6 that could either help it out or hurt it. So
There's nothing to hurt or not hurt. Bethesda's not releasing any information. They won't until the game is ready for release. And they're just working on bug kinks. And yeah, I mean, aside from the random people that went to those, you know, those private forums to release the leaks online or whatever, we don't know anything about the game. And those leaks are they're so dug out in the furthest reaches of the internet. Bethesda's not even bothering to look. I mean, before Fallout 4 was released, there were rumors the Christmas before that you were a soldier in cryostasis. There were rumors going online. So the leaks are there. But yeah, there's nothing to think of it's positive or negative. There's no doubt. They have a formula. They already knew what they were doing, what they were going to do with the next Elder Scrolls game when they were making Skyrim. And when they were making Oblivion, they knew what they were going to do with Skyrim. So with Elder Scrolls 6 being developed, post Skyrim development, I don't think there's anything to say about it. Bethesda hasn't done anything. It's completely neutral.
So without further delay, thank you for your patience. Let's talk about Elder Scrolls 6. Now, speaking in a bubble, if I'm looking at Bethesda Game Studios in a post-Shattered Space world, am I looking at just that DLC and going, man, I'm worried for Elder Scrolls 6? Quite frankly, no.
If you're in a bubble and you see that and you only see that, then you don't know about Skyrim, you don't know about Fallout. And I would say you'd have to see where it goes, because this is the first thing that the studio would be seeing it from this thing from Starfield's. This is Starfield's first expansion.
It's a much broader issue at play here that I've talked about throughout this whole Starfield DLC saga that, frankly, I expected to just be a one and done. Like, oh, it's going to come out with some DLC, I'm going to review it, and move on to the next thing. But obviously, with comments from Todd Howard and Emil Pagliarulo, it spiraled quite a bit, which is why
people need to understand that Todd Howard is being told by Microsoft. Todd Howard's not in charge of anything anymore. People don't understand that. He's not in charge of Fallout. That was handed off to the developers of the TV show. And I know it was handed off because he gave an announcement saying that Fallout New Vegas was canon, only for an interview by the producers later saying that they weren't going to follow any of the canon endings. It wasn't canon. The events happened in Vegas that you play during the gameplay, but the endings that you work for are non-existent. They were gone. And New Vegas was taken over by Voltec. So Todd Howard's not in charge of Fallout anymore. Elder Scrolls 6 has been heavily cloaked and wrapped. And like they use that Xbox spokesman guy for the past few years. Whenever Bethesda messed up, he would do the messages. He's retired. Now they're using Todd Howard. Todd Howard is he's new public relations, I'd say. That's my opinion on it.
Why my point is moved to, it's not really a Shattered Space problem, but really to me a growing concern with Bethesda. I know many people are going to say, well, I've been there for years, and congrats to you. For me, I haven't hated everything they've done in recent years, but I also haven't loved it as much as since Fallout 4 for me. For many people, that line is drawn with Skyrim. We'll get into that a little bit when we speak broadly. But for me personally, the line of quality was really drawn with Fallout 4. I love that game. I love the characters. I love the world. I love the story.
I would say Fallout 4 was coming around the release time when Microsoft acquired them. And while you can say Microsoft has been hands-off, they say they've been hands-off. But if you look at the evidence, I mean, charging a $7 DLC for one mission, and Bethesda actually, what was it? They did, when they first released the Creation Club with Fallout 4, and they saw there was backlash about some of the pricing, they adjusted the pricing in the beginning for some of them. And actually, if I remember, I think they did. But my point is Bethesda's changed. And it's not because it's Bethesda anymore. It's because Microsoft is their employers, and they decide what's going on. I mean, they acquired Activision, World of Warcraft. Microsoft wants to own the gaming industry.
Stories that are packed into it. I also happen to absolutely love Fallout. It's my favorite IP in gaming. So yeah, I absolutely adore Fallout, and really
I like all the Fallout games, even 76 to an extent, because I play with Fallout 76 weapons in Fallout 4.
anything to deal with it. But funny enough, the next game after this was Fallout 76, which I can only stand for so long. Now, its latest update earlier this year in Skyline Valley, its latest major update, I should say, was actually really great, and a great time to launch it as the game was experiencing a resurgence. But as I said in my 2024 review, I've kind of gone through the hurt and the pain of 76 all throughout its launch, so now when it's finally got its legs, I'm kind of a little jaded by the product. But anyway, point being is there's that. And then Starfield, as I said in my impressions and my full review of the game, is a title that I like a lot. I think it has a lot of good stuff going for it. In particular, I like the characters, I like the faction storylines, and I do love space and sci-fi and Bethesda's.
They could have done something more. They could have altered the random planet generation to make it more vehicle accessible. That was like, they put the vehicle there, and I guess it took so much work that they didn't expand on it, and they really could have.
Take on that, but I've gone in numerous times on the issues that the game has, which is why out of the pantheon of Bethesda Game Studios IP, it is my least favorite. So for me, compared to others out there, it has been a less bumpy ride. I kind of looked at 76 as this anomaly, like there's no way they do something like that again. And then that's where I had that whiplash moment with Shattered Space, which is not anywhere close to 76 levels bad, but maybe...
Oh, never mind.
Maybe in the terms of disappointment, for me on a personal level, is where I was kind of trending toward of, this is what they're putting out. And I know this is a long setup for my major talking point here, but again, I put a lot of time and thought into this, so hopefully you can at least appreciate that I'm not just spitting hot take after hot take here. And then
in my opinion, I would say Starfield actually probably has less content. When you're not doing the storylines in Starfield, exploration-wise, Starfield has less content than 76 did, because 76, everything was dead and there were no NPCs, but their stories were left behind. When you go to a planet and it's randomly generated, it's got a list of like, it usually spawns in 4 different random things, and those 4 things come from like 10 lists. So if you go to like 3 planets in a row, and it's got, I don't know how many lists it has, but it was enough for me to notice that it kept reusing the same assets over and over again. Like the cryolab. I went to the same cryolab out of my playthrough, out of the number of planets across, at least like 5 to 8 times. Same cryolab. Same cave full of alien monsters. It was so bad. I love Starfield though.
And I try to take this with a level of seriousness, but when I look at Shattered Space,
I love the possibilities that it can be in the future. Like dude, like Fallout 76 is based off of Fallout 4, and I play with weapons in Fallout 4 that are based off of 76, and I love the hell out of them.
Biggest concern started to rise out of me when I saw Emil Pagliarulo say that designers and people who've been working...
So this right here actually didn't make sense, and I like this footage right here. This is the problem why we say they didn't really do as much. There should be no pirates next to the capital. House Faroon is supposed to be this magical... Well, it's not magical. It's supposed to infiltrate the pirates, and you're supposed to be taking data. Well, Settle System should have been found out where House Faroon was. And like the armor that these pirates are wearing, the gear is from the base game. Some of it might be unique. A lot of it's from the base game. And the Eclipse mercenaries, I believe someone said that the Eclipse mercenaries are on this planet. Mercenaries in a cult-filled world. Why? They're not going to get contracted anywhere. And, like, House Faroon is private. So why are there pirates there? They have enough power to rival the settled systems. And they don't send their fleets out. They sent them out during the Great Crusade according to the lore. But they have all these fleets that rival the settled systems. They should not have a piracy problem on their capital planet. They should not.
Looking at Bethesda Game Studios since Morrowind helped make Shattered Space.
That is basically the whole problem with Starfield.
To me, that's indicative of what I said in that video when we learned that issue is a systemic issue, a quality-based issue. Because a lot of people point to things like Creation Engine and go, that's the problem. And Bethesda can't make a true hardcore role-playing experience with Creation Engine, but I look at the...
Tell me what engine can make a true role-playing experience, because as far as I know, no game engine has been critically acclaimed as the engine above all others.
Mods.
I'm your football obsessed best man.
Like, they can make an RPG experience in here, and they can make a tight RPG experience in there. The problem is it's the design decisions, and the ones they're making, I don't feel have been either A, great, or B, in line with what many of their fans are looking for out of their games.
Starfield, here's some of the main issues. Starfield does not have the core mechanics that made the other two games great. It's got a poor melee system. Melee is give or take depending on your Fallout game, pretty good in Elder Scrolls. The stealth system, besides melee combat, the stealth system, non-existent for Starfield. There's no, they added no new powers in Shattered Space. They added no new powers. There's a lot of missing content. I mean, if the Starborn powers were like the Dragonborn's powers, you'd want to expand on that, but they didn't. Not to mention, in Fallout, all of the NPCs can be killed, basically. And, in the Far Harbor DLC. And in, the Dragonborn DLC. That village, the town you spawn in, you can wipe it out. Can't do that. Most of the NPCs are no one. They have nothing. They're random NPCs that are not named. And any NPC that is named is usually marked as essential. 99% of them are essential.
I've talked about this ad nauseum with kind of the talk from Bethesda Game Studios of simulation, of living in these worlds, and not really focusing on what made them livable in the first place, which is the way they built out content and exploration and the unique items you'd find in their worlds and the unique characters you'd find in their world and the factions you'd find in their worlds. That's what made you want to live in those worlds. And as I highlighted in a video I've been plugging a lot lately, but please do check it out if you missed it, because it is one of my favorite videos I've made called How Skyrim Ruined Bethesda. That was a major inflection point for them as a team, where they started to adjust what was important to them as a development studio to keep longevity with their games, because Skyrim was played so much that they kind of missed the point as to why Skyrim was played so much, which is because it's a generational video game. It's a damn good video game.
I have to disagree with this. I'm just going to stick to Microsoft bought them out. Microsoft makes the rules. I mean, they made Bethesda lay off their, 500 people earlier this year?
But they would instead pack it into features like Fallout 4 settlement mode or Starfield's procedural content to give it a sense of endlessness for players who wanted to sit down and, quote, live in their worlds. And that's what does concern me about Elder Scrolls 6, is the educated design decisions are fading for me. For example, I look at Shattered Space, which really set off this whole conversation, and I go, well, what triggers concern for me in that piece of content there? And for me, at least, it really lies in the fact that when they decided to do a more focused, explorable experience, it felt very much not good or well thought out. And it was like, oh, they're checking a box, but they're not understanding what checking this box of exploration on foot actually means in a Bethesda Game Studios game. And it feels like more and more it's calling for a moment to just pull back and go back to the drawing board. But the real question that I've been asking about Elder Scrolls 6 to a lot of my friends is, can this game ever actually deliver on expectations? And I think that's a very fair question to ask if you remove yourself from all of the Bethesda zeitgeist and you just...
I agree with that. If you remove yourself from the guidelines, I would say that you'd have to redesign the combat system a bit, but I think there would be a way to salvage Starfield.
Let's look at it objectively. We're talking about the last game in the series being Skyrim, a generational open world video game, love it or hate it, that's what it is. And then afterwards, for many people, not all, but for many people, Bethesda Game Studios delivered some of their, I put this in quotes, worst content ever across Fallout 4, Fallout 76, Starfield, and Shattered Space. So a lot of the faith in the developer that made things from Morrowind to Skyrim has faded, and as they're stepping into absolutely their most important video game ever in company history, confidence in them is kind of at a low. And the reason
I would say that they could probably say, I think that's just them lying again. Bethesda, Todd Howard's coming out and making all these claims. The devs are coming out making all these claims. Them saying it's their most important game. That's bullcrap. Elder Scrolls 6 is going to make them more money than Starfield ever could. That's their baby. And I think they were just promoting it, trying to get it out the door so they could move on. So for the devs to say this is their most important game, they're full of crap, because Elder Scrolls 6 is their game. They're just trying to spin it for the future so they can worry about it later, and they can focus on Elder Scrolls 6 right now.
The reason this game is important,
and Fallout 3.
Students suffer when
I think this is Todd Howard's last Elder Scrolls game. That doesn't mean the series stops with him. But number two, it's kind of the GTA 6 effect. Like, do you think Rockstar is going to make another Grand Theft Auto after GTA 6 with all the build-up, all the hype, and the way they supported online from a 2013 game? It's really tough to imagine. And I feel the same way about Elder Scrolls 7, which feels absurd to say out loud. But think about, at the very least, how long that wait will be with Elder Scrolls 6 to Elder Scrolls 7, because Todd's already firmed up, like, after
Fallout 3, Elder Scrolls 6, and Elder Scrolls 4, those are the next 3 titles being released. So I would say Elder Scrolls 7 is very far away, like 15 years far.
Elder Scrolls 6, we're going back to Fallout 5, and then who knows what happens after that? Do you go back to Elder Scrolls again, or do you do, honestly, I hate to say it for some people, but more with Starfield? There's a lot of questions in there where it's going to be another long wait at the very minimum for another Elder Scrolls game. But this one is the biggest one, because with Oblivion, there was an expectation of greatness, and they delivered on it. Morrowind was obviously the back against the wall moment. Skyrim was just the crowning jewel moment. And then obviously we've seen, for some people, the descent afterwards. And the expectation remains the same. You're following up Skyrim. You have...
Story-wise, I would say that Morrowind probably has the best story and choices. Elder Scrolls 4 has the most... Well, it's fun. It's got a lot of magic. And Skyrim was just... had everything. It had not as many decisions, nowhere near as many decisions as Morrowind. And the quests had less risk. But yeah, I'd say Skyrim's still the best out of all 3 of them.
Have to make Elder Scrolls 6 pure greatness, because also I think there may not just be an Elder Scrolls 7. And if it is, it'll be by an entirely different team, an entirely different feel. Or do you just reboot at that point because you reached the big one with all of the zeitgeist? Because on the business front, you can't act like hype doesn't drive a ton of game sales. I look at just how phenomenal Baldur's Gate 3 was, and then you combine that with the game hype it got, and it sold way more copies than I think anyone ever anticipated. So will you have that hype level at an Elder Scrolls 7, especially if it does miss? So I think they are capable of delivering a great game with the team they have and the technology they have, even, believe it or not. I'm more so concerned about the design choices they're making and understanding what players look for in their experience, especially since all of these, I personally have interpreted, poor choices made have stemmed from Skyrim, which they're about to now make the next entry in the series Skyrim hails from, where it could also centralize a lot of those poor decisions that were made.
Now, hold on.
No doubt.
Rumors for Elder Scrolls 6. The main thing is the tower. I think it's called the Antimantian Tower in High Rock. Apparently, they're doing a Starborn thing where once it's literally it's got something to do with the gods, and you go in the tower and you basically reset the world. But you basically can become one of the divine or a Daedric prince, which is kind of weird. And then you use some sort of power in the tower, and you can reset the world and all the questlands and stuff. And they kind of did that with Elder Scrolls 2, actually. I think it was Daggerfall, where they had all the endings and all the timelines kind of happen all at the same time. They're taking Starfield's concept and reapplying it. And they already did this with Elder Scrolls 2.
They continue to come back around to Skyrim all these years later, and they continue to come back.
All right. Well, I just wanted to give my 2 cents on the first half. I think, yeah, I posted my opinions. Anyway, thanks for watching.